The corridors of the Galactic Empire's flagship were cold and sterile, bathed in the blue glow of the hyperlights that flashed past in a blur of speed. General Evelyn Corr, leader of the Terran forces, walked with a slow, deliberate gait. She had been summoned to the Empire's highest chamber, a command center that hovered above the vast emptiness of space, located at the heart of the peace treaty negotiations. A treaty that had held the galaxy in balance for nearly 9 centuries. The treaty that had ensured a fragile, yet enduring, peace between the Human Confederation and the Alien Empire. But tonight, Evelyn knew, everything was about to change. At 42, she was a woman of power, respected across the human colonies and feared by the Empire's leaders. Her reputation as an unyielding strategist, an iron fist wrapped in the velvet of diplomacy, had served her well throughout her career. A career forged on the battlefield, where she had led humanity's forces to victory in countless conflicts. But none of that mattered now. She was not here to fight, she was here to negotiate. And as her boots clicked against the metal floors, Evelyn's mind was not focused on the strategy of war, but on something darker, something that gnawed at her insides. The peace treaty, the cornerstone of the galaxy's stability, was no longer a symbol of unity. It had become a cage, locking humanity into a system controlled by the Empire. The deal had been struck out of necessity, not trust. Evelyn's role had been to ensure that humanity did not fall too deeply into the Empire's grasp. But now, as the time to renegotiate the terms came, Evelyn knew the truth. This peace had been built on a lie. The chamber doors opened before her, revealing the silent assembly of the Empire's High Council. 7 alien figures, each tall and imposing, sat at a circular table bathed in an eerie, unnatural light. They were the rulers of the Empire, beings whose species and intentions were as foreign to humanity as the stars themselves. Their eyes, large and unblinking, observed her without emotion. And standing in the center of the room was a figure that sent a chill down Evelyn's spine, Supreme Leader Khazar, a being whose cold, reptilian demeanor masked a ruthless and calculating mind. General Corr. Khazar's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. His words were punctuated with a hint of disdain, though his posture remained poised, regal even. You arrive late, but I assume you have your reasons. Evelyn bowed slightly, acknowledging his position. My apologies, Supreme Leader. I wanted to ensure I was prepared for what was to come. Khazar's lips curled into a faint smile, his elongated teeth gleaming under the harsh light. Prepared? Or perhaps you already know what is to come. The tension in the room thickened, and Evelyn could feel the weight of Khazar's words like a tightening noose. This was no longer just a negotiation. She was walking into a trap, and every instinct within her screamed to turn around and leave. But she couldn't. Not now. The stakes were too high. I came to renegotiate the terms of the treaty, Evelyn said, her voice unwavering despite the growing anxiety within her. Humanity will not tolerate being shackled any longer. We demand autonomy, independence from the Empire's reach. You cannot hold us under your thumb forever. A ripple of amusement spread across the Alien Council. They exchanged glances, their sharp eyes calculating her every word, every movement. Khazar, however, remained still, his cold gaze never leaving her. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity before he spoke again. You misunderstand, General Corr, he said, leaning forward ever so slightly. The peace treaty was not a gift, it was a concession. A rare and gracious offering, one that has ensured stability across this galaxy for nearly 1,000 years. But the price of peace, as you well know, is always control. Evelyn's fists clenched at her sides. Control, she spat. You call this peace? This is nothing but oppression disguised as diplomacy. Humanity deserves better than to be nothing more than a puppet to your empire. Khazar's eyes gleamed with something akin to amusement. And what do you think you can do, General? Your people are powerful, yes, but you are not the only force in this galaxy. The Empire's reach extends beyond what your limited understanding can grasp. Renegotiating the treaty? You cannot possibly believe that we would allow such a thing. Evelyn stood tall, despite the voice in her head telling her to flee. I know what you're capable of. But this time, it will be different. The human spirit will not bow to you any longer. The Supreme Leader leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Perhaps. But understand this, General, if you dare disrupt the balance we've created, if you attempt to break the treaty, the consequences will be far more severe than you can imagine. The peace you seek will crumble in an instant. Evelyn felt the weight of those words, but she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The Empire might be powerful, but humanity had something they could never understand: resilience, an unbreakable will to survive. And Evelyn Kaur embodied that spirit better than anyone. I will not back down, she said, her voice firm and resolute. And neither will my people. Khazar's smile returned, colder than before. Then you have made your choice. And so have we. Before Evelyn could react, the chamber doors slid open, and 2 heavily armored guards entered. Their presence was a signal, an unmistakable sign of what was to come. Take her, Khazar ordered, his voice a final, cold command. Evelyn's heart raced, but she didn't resist. She knew there was no point. The Empire had already made its decision. And in that moment, as the guards moved to arrest her, Evelyn Kaur realized that the peace she had fought to protect was no longer in her hands. The galaxy was on the brink, and the Empire's grip would not be loosened easily. But neither would humanity's fight for freedom. The doors closed behind her as she was escorted out, and Evelyn felt a strange sense of calm. The time for negotiation had ended. The time for rebellion had begun. The cold metal walls of the holding cell seemed to close in around Evelyn as she sat on the hard bench. The clang of the door closing behind her reverberated in her mind, the finality of it sinking deep into her bones. She was no longer a general, no longer a leader of humanity's forces. She was a prisoner, an enemy of the Empire. But the thought didn't terrify her. It only solidified the resolve that had been building in her heart since the moment she'd stepped onto this ship. Evelyn's thoughts raced. She had been arrested, but not for lack of planning. Her mind was still sharp, still calculating. She knew what the Empire had done in the past to those who dared to challenge them: prison, exile, and in many cases, death. But Evelyn Kaur was no ordinary human. She was more than just a soldier or a tactician, she was the symbol of humanity's defiance. And she had a plan. Her wristband, which the guards had ignored when they shackled her, buzzed with a faint signal. It was a small device, a token of her command, something she'd used for covert communications during the war. The signal wasn't from any of her own people. No, it was from an ally within the Empire's ranks, a spy who had been feeding her information for years. A trusted source, someone she knew would never leave her behind. The device buzzed again, louder this time, and a short, coded message appeared on the tiny screen embedded in her wristband. It was from Derek the spy. The resistance has already begun. You're not alone, General. A small smile tugged at Evelyn's lips. Her connection to the resistance was fragile, built on whispers and secrets, but it was there. Humanity's defiance was alive, even in the heart of the Empire. That thought brought her some comfort, but it wasn't enough. She needed more. She needed to act, to ignite the spark that would light the fire of rebellion across the galaxy. A soft sound interrupted her thoughts. The door to her cell slid open, and 2 guards entered, their weapons drawn. They were tall, imposing figures clad in dark armor, their faces obscured by helmets. One of them approached Evelyn, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her to her feet. Your presence is requested, the guard said, his voice devoid of emotion. Evelyn said nothing as they led her out of the cell. She knew better than to resist. She'd seen what happened to those who fought back. Instead, she walked with her head held high, projecting strength even in the face of captivity. They brought her into the heart of the Empire's flagship, an enormous, gleaming chamber filled with glowing screens and towering consoles. Khazar stood at the center of the room, flanked by the High Council, the 7 alien figures who had once appeared so imposing, so untouchable. Now, they seemed almost trivial to her. She had faced far worse in her years as a soldier. This was nothing but a stage for the Empire's twisted theater of control. General Kor, Khazar said, his voice smooth yet cold. You have chosen your path. Do you regret your defiance? Evelyn's gaze locked with his. Regret? She repeated, her voice steady. I regret nothing. The peace you claim to have created is a farce. You cannot hold humanity in chains, Khazar. You cannot control us. The Supreme Leader's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening. You speak of freedom, General, but freedom has a cost. And you will learn that cost, one way or another. He motioned to one of his aides, who stepped forward with a small tablet. The aide pressed a few buttons, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room, a map of the galaxy, with various planets and star systems marked in bright red. The human colonies, the rebellion strongholds, and the Empire's key military outposts blinked with urgency. This is your future, General, Khazar said. The resistance you speak of is nothing but a blip on the radar. The Empire's forces are vast. You cannot win. The treaty is unbreakable. Evelyn's eyes flicked over the map, her mind racing. This was a strategic moment, an opportunity to strike back, to make her enemies underestimate her even more. The resistance is growing, she said, voice rising. And every moment you waste by underestimating humanity, you lose. You think we are weak because you control the stars, but you forget that we control our fate. You underestimate us at your peril. Khazar's gaze hardened. He leaned in, his voice low. Do not make the mistake of thinking you control anything, General. You are a prisoner. Your people are nothing without your leadership. And you will watch as we tear that leadership apart. Evelyn stood her ground, her fists clenching at her sides. You can break me. You can imprison me. But you will never crush the spirit of humanity. Not as long as I draw breath. Khazar's lips curled into a smile. We shall see. With a gesture, the guards stepped forward again, seizing her by the arms and escorting her out of the room. But Evelyn wasn't finished. As they walked, she let her mind race. Khazar's words had been meant to intimidate her, but they hadn't worked. They had only reminded her of the power she still held. Humanity's strength was not in its weapons or armies. It was in its unyielding will to survive, to rise even when crushed beneath the weight of oppression. Her mind turned back to the holographic map. The Empire's forces were spread thin, their resources overstretched. There was a way out of this, a way to turn the tide in humanity's favor. She had allies within the Empire's own ranks, and she knew that the Empire's grip was not as strong as they made it seem. By the time they returned her to her cell, Evelyn had a plan. It was bold, risky, and fraught with danger. But it was humanity's only chance. And she would see it through to the end. The resistance wasn't just some rebel force hidden in the shadows. It was a movement. A movement that would fight for freedom no matter the cost. And Evelyn Kor was ready to be its spark. The rebellion had begun. Evelyn Kor had spent days in the confines of her prison cell, but it felt like weeks. The walls, cold and unyielding, were both a reminder of her captivity and a space where her thoughts swirled relentlessly. She had little time to waste. Every moment in the Empire's grasp brought her closer to a choice: break under their pressure, or rise up, defiant and unstoppable. Her wristband, hidden beneath the layers of her uniform, remained her most valuable asset. It had been her connection to Derek, the spy within the Empire's ranks. But it also carried a far greater purpose now, a symbol of humanity's resistance, and a tool that could turn the tide. The messages from Derek had come in sporadically, but with urgency. The sound of the door sliding open pulled her from her thoughts. A figure stood in the doorway, tall, cloaked in a dark uniform. The figure stepped into the room, and Evelyn's eyes sharpened as she recognized the spy's face. General Kor. Derek's voice was quiet, the weight of their shared mission thick between them. We don't have much time. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, focusing on the man who had risked everything to bring her hope. I assume you have news. Derek hesitated, glancing over his shoulder to ensure no one was watching. His eyes, dark and tired, betrayed the strain of his double life. The resistance has mobilized. They've made their move on several fronts. But the Empire is already moving to crush them. I've managed to smuggle this. He pulled out a small data chip from his pocket, slipping it discreetly into the palm of her hand. It contains the Empire's military deployment orders, every base, every stronghold, every tactical movement. This is the key to hitting them where it hurts. Evelyn felt a surge of determination course through her. This could change everything. Derek nodded, his face taut. It will, but not if we don't move fast. The Empire has already started tightening its grip. They're looking for you, Core. They know you're the key to everything. They will never allow you to leave this ship alive if they find out you've been in contact with the Resistance. Evelyn gripped the chip tightly. She had no illusions. The risks were immense, the odds stacked against her. But her options were clear: sit back and wait for the Empire to suffocate her, or act, and break free from the shackles they had placed on humanity. She stood, her movements measured but decisive. I won't sit in this cell and wait for my fate to be sealed. You've risked too much for me to do nothing now. Derek moved closer, his voice barely above a whisper. The Empire knows too much. Their surveillance is unmatched. If you're seen, even once, it's over. Then we make sure they don't see us. Evelyn replied with a steely calm. We're not going to escape. Not yet. We need to strike first. He stared at her, unsure of what she meant. But Evelyn was already putting her plan into motion. She turned toward the back of the cell where a hidden panel, almost invisible in the stark lighting, awaited her touch. It was one of the few remnants of the human escape plan that had been hidden in plain sight. A small hole in the Empire's perfect security. As her hand slid across the panel, the wall opened with a faint hiss, revealing a narrow corridor. She stepped inside, motioning for Derek to follow. We're going to the command center. That's where the real fight begins. Derek's face twisted in uncertainty, but he followed her nonetheless. The command center? Are you insane? That's the heart of the Empire's military operations. We'll never make it. Evelyn stopped and turned toward him, meeting his gaze with a fierce intensity. You underestimate the human spirit, Derek. The Empire may control the stars, but it's the will of people like us that will break their chains. They moved through the hidden corridors, passing by cameras and guards who had no idea they were mere seconds from being outwitted. The ship was enormous, and though its size offered the Empire an advantage in terms of security, it also provided cover for those who knew how to navigate its labyrinthine halls. As they approached the main lift shaft leading to the upper levels, Evelyn's wristband buzzed. It was a coded message from the Resistance. We are ready. We will support you. Strike fast. We're with you. Her heart quickened. The Resistance had mobilized. She wasn't alone. This was no longer just her fight. It was the fight of all humanity. Reaching the lift shaft, Evelyn and Derek took their positions, waiting for the moment when they would be able to move freely within the Empire's command structure. The tension in the air was palpable, a charged silence that only made the weight of what they were about to do feel more daunting. Seconds later, the lift arrived. The door slid open, revealing a small group of elite soldiers, Empire's finest, trained to ensure no one dared to challenge their authority. Without hesitation, Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room with a calculating focus. Derek was already moving, taking out the first soldier with a precise shot that echoed in the silence. Evelyn followed suit, her movements swift, efficient. She wasn't the general anymore. She was a warrior, an unstoppable force of nature. The Resistance had started their battle, but Evelyn Core was about to ignite the spark that would consume the Empire from within. One by one, the soldiers fell. Their armor clanged against the floor, their surprise turning to terror as they realized they were up against something far more dangerous than they could have anticipated. A human who refused to bow. A human who refused to lose. As the last soldier crumpled to the ground, Evelyn stood in the middle of the chamber, her breath steady but her resolve burning like wildfire. We're here to end this, she said, her voice loud enough for the Empire's officers to hear. Humanity will no longer be a prisoner to your empire. Derek stepped beside her, his eyes gleaming with something far more than relief. This is only the beginning. And it was. The galaxy would feel the tremors of their actions. The Empire had underestimated humanity's will to survive, and now, Evelyn Core was the herald of that reckoning. The resistance was rising. And with it, the hope for a new galaxy, one that would no longer bend to the Empire's will.